If you're anything like me, either you or someone you know is completely obsessed with Sriracha hot sauce. To me, it's one of the best hot sauces you can buy at pretty much any grocery store you walk into. I'm about to show you a very simple way of infusing the awesome flavor of Sriracha hot sauce into your everyday table salt. You're gonna be amazed at how easy it is to take this and turn it into this. You're only gonna need 2 ingredients for this, and that is your Sriracha hot sauce and your salt. Today I'm using sea salt. This is just something I was able to buy in bulk locally. It's coarse sea salt. I enjoy my salt a little bit more coarse than your everyday table salt, but table salt will work, Himalayan peak salt will work. Pretty much any type of salt you can get your hands on is gonna work for this. First thing you wanna do is get yourself a mixing bowl. Once you get your mixing bowl, go ahead and dump your salt into the mixing bowl. For me, today I'm using half a pound of salt. That's 8 ounces of salt. Okay, let's start mixing in this Sriracha. And when you mix in this Sriracha, you wanna be really careful because if you put too much in, it's gonna kind of turn into a paste and it will start to dissolve the salt, and then everything is just gonna kind of stick together in one big giant clump at the end of the whole process. So what I do is I start out with a 1 tablespoon measuring spoon. 1 tablespoon measuring spoon. I dump that in a little bit at a time. After every time I put a tablespoon in, I mix it up really good to see where I'm at. If you just want a little bit of that Sriracha flavor, but you don't want it to be too overpowering, you're gonna wanna put less than me. I'm putting in today 2.5 tablespoons. I put 1 tablespoon in, I mixed it around really well, and it turned the salt kind of to a pinkish color. It was a light pink color, and then I put in 1 more tablespoon and it brought it closer to what I wanted, but it wasn't quite there yet. And then that extra half tablespoon really bumped it up to exactly where I wanted it to be. You want your salt to ideally kind of hold its shape a little bit. It's gonna start to try to clump together, but you don't want the salt swimming in Sriracha. So just mix it enough to where you get that good Sriracha color, as well as the salt just kind of clumping together and holding its shape a little bit. That's kind of the ideal saturation point. Once you have it all mixed together, we need to get a baking sheet with some wax paper on it, just some parchment paper, and let's put the salt onto the wax paper. When you're putting the salt onto the wax paper, it's really good to use like a rubber spatula or something, just something that you can make sure that you're spreading the salt as thin as possible across that baking sheet. So that way as it's drying, it doesn't have a big thick layer to dry, it's just this tiny little layer. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the video, go down and hit the like button. That's gonna tell YouTube that you like the video, and then they're gonna hopefully show other people that may also like the video. It's gonna help me out a lot, thank you. For this next step, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, and none of them are wrong. We need to get this salt dehydrating. If you want, you can just leave it out for a few days. That works totally fine. You can put it in a dehydrator, because that's a really low heat way of dehydrating this salt. You can put it in the oven, or you can do what I'm doing and you can put it into a smoker. This is gonna be a smoked Sriracha salt on my end, but really you can put it in the smoker, oven, dehydrator, or air dry it. The biggest thing to think about here is if you're using something with a heat source, you need to be really careful about your heats. What will happen is it's gonna start turning brown, and although the flavor is still gonna be intact and the good flavor will be there, it's just not gonna look as good as a nice pink Sriracha salt. I think it's a safe bet that anything that you use a heat source with, just go ahead and put it on the lowest temperature setting that you possibly can. With my smoker, I think that's about 175 degrees. That's a little on the high end, but it still works out pretty well. I don't end up burning my salt. If you do it in the oven, go ahead and put it on your lowest setting. You might even want to open the oven door a little bit. Just make sure you keep that heat really low. As your salt is dehydrating, you need to be mixing it up a little bit, and that's going to speed up the process of the dehydration. Today, I am mixing it up about every half hour or so. That seems to be perfect for me. And you're going to notice as it's dehydrating, it's clumping up and kind of getting stuck together, and that's totally normal. Don't worry about it. Still just mix it up really well, and don't pay too much attention to the salt clumping together, because we're gonna fix that later. Okay, it's been an hour and a half since we put this on the smoker, and this stuff is finally dry. As you can see, there's some clumps to it, but that's really not a big deal. I'm gonna take care of that right now. There's a couple ways you can take care of it. You can put it into a blender or a spice grinder or a food processor, something like that, and that will very quickly get rid of those clumps. The reason why I don't like to use that is because it turns the salt to almost a powder, and I don't want this to be a powder. I want it to be just a coarse grade salt. I don't want it to be Sriracha salt powder. So for me, what I'm doing here today is I'm just taking a large spoon and I'm putting pressure down and I'm pushing down onto the salt clumps, and it breaks them apart really well. Yeah, it takes a little bit more time, but it's worth it in the end for me. So I just go through the whole baking sheet, breaking it up with a spoon. It turned out to be exactly what I needed. I've been experimenting a lot with pepper salts and spicy salts and smoked in all sorts of different ways, smoked, baked, everything, all sorts of different ways of making different salts. And each one of them has kind of come up short to me until this one. This salt really, the flavor of the Sriracha comes through so well on this. And I really wish that you guys could just taste this with me, because, oh yeah, mine's smoked, obviously, so I get that smoked flavor. but then the Sriracha really just comes through. With salt, it's really hard to get a flavor that will come up and meet that salt flavor, because that salt flavor is so strong. This Sriracha does a great job of that, and I really love it. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna ask you guys to watch this video right here, because if you enjoyed this video, you're definitely gonna enjoy this one too. Thank you guys, I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Cat!